Oh! Oh! What's up? What's up, y'all? How's everybody doing? Can you hear me? Can you hear my face? Oh! Well, thank you guys so much for being here. It truly means the world to me that I can do this. Um, I apologize in advance. We will probably not get to everything you guys want to go over, unfortunately. But hopefully, I will be clearing up some questions, and maybe you'll even get to see my Uncle Joe. Who knows? So what we're gonna do to start things off, one of the most requested things was to look at my track, Blindfold Vasectomy, which you guys saw in the flange video. So I'm just gonna go over here. Can you guys see my Ableton? You guys see my Abletons over here? Um, Hello? You see my Abletons right there? I'm just gonna minimize that. Um, you guys see my Abletons ready? All right, great, cool. So let's go ahead and I'm gonna test the computer audio real quick. Can you hear this? You hear all that stuff? Okay, computer audio. You guys hearing that?
Yeah.
All right. Let me minimize my face a little bit. Minimize that. There we go. All right. All right. So how are we doing on volume, everyone? Okay, great. All right. So let's just go deep inside blindfold vasectomy here. I'm actually going to start by turning off all my mastering stuff because I think it would be beneficial for us to just remaster this completely so you get an idea for my process here. So I'm just going to delete all this bullshit right here. And perfect. So a big repeated question I was getting was to how to properly mix down my shit. To start things off, you're gonna want to give yourself a good amount of headroom. So I would go to the loudest part of your track and get, in this case, measure 33. And I would go ahead and measure how much headroom or distance from 0 dB you actually are. So conveniently, Live has a headroom meter on top of each of these tracks here. It actually tells us where we're peaking, how far away we are from 0 dB. So it looks like my master is peaking around -7. And this is plenty of headroom. This allows me to turn up certain elements such as the kick and snare without clipping on my master. And this is real important, guys. You know, a bunch of my students, they're like, oh shit, I gotta be Skrillex. I gotta make my shit super loud. But here's the thing, if you're not giving yourself that headroom, let's say I'm clipping out -12. Let's say I wanted to turn up the drums. There's some other bullshit. I start to clip, and it's not good for anybody, folks. So that's why it's super important to give yourself that headroom so you're not going crazy there. So here's the other thing that I've noticed with a lot of my students is that they cram too much low end in the bottom frequency spectrum. They have too many bass elements. Their kick is kind of clashing with their bass. And as I explained in my kick and bass video, the relationship between the kick and bass is like any other. We have to decide who's going to be on top. So let's just take a look at my bass track over here. So I'm just going to solo this out. Okay, wonderful. So this is my bass drop 808. And then I have another bass track happening over here for the second drop. And notice that I only have one 808 or bass element at any given time. I'm not stacking multiple bass elements together, multiple 808s. It always introduces muddiness when you have more than one player in the room, all right? So let's go ahead and just minimize the number of low-end instruments you're using in your tracks here. And okay, so once we have a super solid 808, let's go ahead and slap an EQ8 on there, and let's just see where that 808 is hitting. So I'm just going to look at my EQ8. I'm actually going to pull up the main view here by hitting just this triangle right here. And we're just going to take a look at where 808 is peaking. So it looks like it's around 40 hertz. And the way I'm telling that is because the nice thing about the EQ is that it conveniently tells us where the frequencies are hitting by just looking at this little tiny little box right here. And it's telling us not only the frequency, which is currently 40 hertz, but also the note. So I'm actually hitting an E here. Wowzers. Okay, so that's useful information. Now let's go ahead and go to our kick, which is located in our drum rack over here. And so this is the kick right here. Let's go ahead and solo that out. Wonderful. And here's the situation. So without the EQ8, let's go ahead and just test where my kick is hitting. So I'm just going to drop this EQ8 over here, and we're just going to take a look. So it's looking like kick is hitting a little bit above the 808, which is good. So we've established the power relationship here. The kick here is going to be on top. Now, just to make sure that there's no confusion as to the roles in the bedroom, we're actually going to change the filter type on that first point there. We're actually going to change it to a low cut, and we're going to change it to the ×4 filter type. I like the ×4 because it's a steeper, sharper cut, like you sharpened your machete. So we're actually going to take the ×4, and we're just going to circumcise the bottom of the kick, say around 50 hertz, just to make sure that there's no overlap between the low frequencies of the kick and the bass. So let's just take a listen. And so here's the situation. If I increase the frequency cutoff here to a higher value, we start to really lose the power and meat of the kick. So it's always finding that balance, okay? All right, so it's looking like 50 hertz is kind of the sweet spot there. Let's go ahead and hear that with the beat. Beautiful. Oh, soggy. Okay, wowzers. So let's just let's actually deconstruct a couple of the layers here. So I use a lot of noise, and in this case, I'm really starting to kind of pile on the blankets. If you've watched my warmth video, a common technique that I use and a lot of producers use is to have like a nice layer of fuzz or crackle, which kind of just warms up the whole track here. And here I'm using Paul Horn's Inside 2. Highly recommend this album. Great warm blankets on this one. And I've just kind of layered this whole thing on top of the track. And I also have a nice other layer, significantly wetter, And just some crickets crackling, just to kind of, fill in that space there. And then finally, I have this layer, which I call I fart in your general direction. Sounds a little bit like this. And the cool thing about this layer is actually it's being triggered by a gate, which I've sidechained from the hi-hat in my drum rack. So every time my hi-hat hits, I believe it is the Cat's-Bill here, this thing right here, every time that hits, we're actually hearing some farts in our general direction here. Pretty nifty. Okay, wowzers. So that's just all my blankets there. And then with regards to the main synth, once again, I've layered this into two distinct portions. This is kind of the main layer right here. And what I've done here is it's very complicated. There's a bunch of shit on here, but basically, I've just taken a single guitar note. It sounds like if I just take all the effects off, it sounds like this without the distortion. Just sounds like a basic guitar note. I've layered some auto panning on there to kind of get that tremolo effect. And then I've also put a frequency shifter on there, which kind of warps the sound and makes it sound out of tune and super metallic. So I just pushed it up to there. I believe it was 840. And then finally I added that distortion there. The heavy guitar tube is actually available inside of Ableton. If you go to your audio effect rack, open it up, go to amp simulation, and it should be right there. So you can actually incorporate this sound into your own productions. Wowzers. So it sounds like this. And then finally, I add a little bit of chorus to kind of widen out the sound. Wowzers. So I'm just going to double check that this live stream thing is still working. Okay, wowzers. All right. Okay, great. So you guys are still hanging in there. All right. And then I just have another layer that's, I believe, just an octave down. And that's the main synth for Blindfold, bitches. Okay, so that's interesting. So we have that little glitch effect. And the way that happens is actually on my master, I've placed this audio effect rack that I've created to essentially emulate that glitching effect. The way I've done that is I've placed a simple delay. Here, let me just open up the automation here. I've placed a simple delay with a really, really short kind of time value. So basically it looks like this. So I have a simple delay, right? And then I link these together so that it's mono. The delay time is the same for both left and right channels. I turn the sync off so it is not tied to the master BPM there. Change it to a time value, and I make the time value very, very short, only a couple milliseconds right there. I turn up the feedback to 100%, and then whenever I want to introduce the glitch effect, I simply turn the dry wet knob up. So check it out. Whoa. Oh. So that way you can introduce your glitches anytime you want, simply by automating the dry wet value. And if you wanted to, you could actually alter the length of the glitch by increasing or decreasing this time value. So check it. Whoa. So that gets you a nice G. Jones type effect. So anytime you want to introduce those glitches, just place the simple delay preferably on your master. Change it from the global BPM away from the sync button into the time value, and just make the time value super duper small. And there you have your glitch effect, my good people. Okay, so let's move on. Of course, Rick Ross makes a guest appearance. All right. Uh-huh. And as a general sort of mixing rule, I hope you notice that on pretty much every track, I've cut the lows out using an EQA, and this just ties back to that first principle of keeping your low end as clean and precise as possible. So we only really want that one 808 dominating the low end here. So for that reason, we basically cut out the lows on every other track, including my beatbox. So I've cut the lows there. I've also cut the lows on my main kind of walk synth. Once again, cut the lows on my farts. And basically every single other element, I've cut the lows out just to make sure my low end is as clean and precise as humanly possible. Now let's move on to kind of the drop there, or the breakdown. Excuse me. Okay, so check it. Here's the situation. For this section, I want it to be slow, creepy, and flange-like. So what I did was I actually automated the song tempo. So I started the song out at 187 beats per minute. And then in this breakdown section, I've automated the tempo so that actually the whole track actually slows down to 174. So it's going, and it slowly starts slowing down. So then when I finally reach this section, we're hearing more of that booty bass. I love vodka in the morning. All right. Okay. Wowzers. So here's the situation. Let me just talk a little bit about the drums processing here. That was a big question from you guys. So what I have on my drum rack is not a whole lot, it looks like. All I have really is this audio effect rack called Tape, which I've downloaded off the internet. It basically just introduces a ton of distortion, drive, and compression. Ooh, oh, that sounds brutal. So you can really crank the sound there. You can introduce some white noise as well. And the nice thing is that I've actually grouped both the drums and the 808 here so that both are being distorted at once. Pretty swaggin'. I threw up in my mouth a little bit. Alright, now this is my favorite part. You'll notice that Skrillex actually makes an appearance. So this super distorted section right here actually is just the acapella from Wild for the Night that I've slowed down ridiculously. And then I use this plugin called the Camel Crusher to introduce a lot of distortion here. This is one of my favorite plugins. It's free. Highly recommend that you download this. You just put it on every track and just flames the shit out of it. You got my sound. Wowzers. So even Skrillex has a place in this world. Who would have thought? he'll be quite pleased with that addition. So, you know, anytime you're in down, just add a little bit of Skrillex. You'll be all good. And then right above Skrill, we have Getter. This is from Getter's sample pack that I got off of Splice. You know, even he has some sort of value if, you know, you use him right. And that's what's responsible for these quick plucks here. Wowzers. And all I've done is I just chopped up the plucks here so that it's just a little bit more interesting, much more than what Getter could have done. Okay, wowzers. So that's basically the whole track right there. Just to summarize, make sure when you're mixing, first off, to give yourself that headroom so you're not clipping like an idiot. And also to make sure that you've tamed the low end, you've cut the low end out on everything except one element, in this case, the bass. So, wowzers, so this is just wonderful. We've mixed down everything properly. It's sounding great. We have the arrangement finalized. Everything is in its right place. We've even put a little Skrillex in there. Now what we're going to do is we're actually going to start the mastering process. And mastering, if you guys aren't familiar, is just the final step before your song is ready to go. And just a brief disclaimer, mastering cannot turn a shit mix into a good one. It can only turn a good mix into a great mix. You know, as Uncle Joe said, you can't polish a turd. Well, you could, but it's not very tasty. So what we're going to do is we're going to start the mastering process, and I'll actually do all this with built-in stock Ableton plugins, so you guys are all able to do this. The first step on my master that I'm going to do, I'm actually going to add an EQ8 on here. You can go ahead and disregard these. These were just effects, the glitch effects that I was showing earlier. So the first step is to just add an EQ8 on there. And we're actually going to enable all 8 points here. And we're going to change them to the same filter type. Okay, wowzers. Okay, so all of them are exactly the same. We've selected the middle filter type on all of them. And what we're going to do is we're actually going to open this EQ8 up once again by hitting that triangle there to give us that beautiful view. And what we're going to do is we're going to turn the Qs all the way up. The Q just controls how thin the band of the point is going to be. So as you can see, when I have a super low Q, it's very wide and bulbous. A very high Q makes it just like a little incision needle point right there, which is exactly what we want. So we're going to turn the Qs on all these points all the way up, and we're actually going to right click on the EQ8 title and enable oversampling. It just provides a slightly nicer sound. And finally, the last step is we're going to enable the headphone button. And what this does, it allows us to actually preview just the frequency band we've selected with the EQ8. So for example, I'm playing the whole track, and let's say I just wanted to hear the frequencies at 0.3. There they are. Wowzers. So what we're going to do is we're going to actually loop the busiest part of the track, and the way we're going to do that is just by highlighting it and then hitting Command L. And you see what happened there. Automatically, the loop bracket jumped around the area that we wanted to work with. Beautiful. And what we're going to do is we're going to identify the resonant peaks in the frequency spectrum here and then dampen down on them. So resonant peaks are tiny slices of the frequency spectrum that are disproportionately louder than others. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to slowly sweep down. We're going to start at the very top there, very top right corner, the highest point of the frequency spectrum. And we're going to slowly sweep down And when we find something that's disproportionately loud, just really sticking out at us, we're going to essentially surgically remove it like a tumor. So what we're going to do is we're just going to play that busiest part of the beat. I'm going to start at the farthest right point. We're going to slowly sweep down until we find that first resonant peak. Ready? Okay, here we go. All right. So slowly sweeping. Here we go. We're looking for something that's really going to pop out at us. Up. Nothing yet. Nothing yet. No. No. Okay, so we're starting to get some stuff there. Oof. Yeah. Okay, so that's really hurting my eardrums. Um, it's bad, but it's not bad enough. Okay, so let's just keep going here. All right. Mm, ooh, okay, so that's starting to get problematic. I'm looking for something really bad here. Not quite. Ooh, here we go. All right, so that's disgusting right there. It's starting to make my eardrums bleed. So now that we've identified this resonant peak here, what we're gonna do is we're gonna leave the point where it is. We're gonna let go, and we're actually going to turn the gain knob in the EQ8 controls down. So we've isolated the point there, and now what we're gonna do is just gonna dampen down on it. And we want to dampen down around 2 to 4 dB for these upper frequency resonant peaks. So now that we've found that one, let's just keep going from where we left off. Keep going. Keep going. Ooh. That's all right. All right, so that's, okay, so that makes me want to kill myself. So what we're going to do is we're just going to dampen down upon that peak as well. Let's keep going. Okay, so that just, it's like needles being stuck under my fingernails. And let's keep going from there. Okay. So as you can see, this is a very tedious, boring surgical process. So which is why we pay mastering engineers to do this for us. But for some of us that are broke and otherwise incompetent, this is something you could do on your own. Okay, so it looks like we're about to approach real bad one. Okay, so that's just all right. So that's just the Holocaust right there. Okay, so let's turn that down and let's keep going. All right, so that's pretty bad. Once again, we're just gonna eliminate that resonant peak. Um, keep going. I'm kind of speeding through this here. Not too bad in this area. Ooh. Not too bad. Ooh. I will live with that. Let's keep going. Ooh. Ooh. Yeah, like that. So here's the situation. When we start reaching these kind of lower end resonant peaks, be really careful with how much you cut because they can disproportionately affect the mix there. So just be real cautious that you're not sucking the life out of your mix like my stepwife. That doesn't make any sense. I don't think you can't really have a stepwife, can you? It's just all the same there. Um, okay, great. So we've identified the bulk of the resonant peaks. I'm actually going to take this last point here and we're just going to roll off, whoopsie daisies. We're just going to roll off the super duper low frequencies that are kind of barely audible. And this way we're just kind of getting rid of the rumble there that no human can actually pick up on. Nice thing about Live 10 coming soon is that the cutoff for the EQ8 will be lowered from 30 hertz, which is still audible on really good club systems, to 10 hertz, which will be much more flexible when it comes to the frequency cutoff there. Okay, so wowzers, we've identified the resonant peaks in the mix. Give yourself a tap on the wrist. You guys are doing great. Now what we're going to do is we're just going to add some gentle compression on the master here. And what a compressor does, if you aren't familiar, is it just takes the loudest points of a signal and turns them down. So it just listens for when the signal goes above a certain threshold or volume, and then it just dampens down on them. So as a result, the distance between the loudest parts of your signal and the quietest parts is reduced. So there's less dynamic range between the loudest and quietest parts of the signal. And this allows us to then turn the whole signal up because we have less peaks to worry about. Okay, so check it. On the master, our compressor is going to be really gentle. We're just trying to gently squeeze the mix together, like, you know, a nice spandex, essentially. We're just trying to kind of just squeeze the fat together, just make it a little bit more appealing, you know, in the right places. So what we're going to do is we're just going to take the makeup knob, makeup setting off, and we're actually going to increase the attack to 150 milliseconds and the release to 300. So what the attack means is it's the amount of time the compressor waits after the signal has gone above the threshold. So let's say the threshold is minus 14 or whatever. So after the signal goes above minus 14 dB, the compressor waits 150 milliseconds before it actually starts working, and this prevents it from being overly active and too responsive. We want the compression to be real gentle caressing of your jelly rolls, okay? So we don't want it to, you know, just slash off the fat. We want it to be real slow and understanding of your weight loss problems. Then on the release is the amount of time after the signal has gone back below the threshold, so after, you know, the kick or the snare has ended, where the compressor actually lets go. So right now the compressor waits 300 milliseconds after the signal has gone below the threshold to actually stop compressing. And once again, this makes the compressor real gentle, real, just a very understanding, nice guy. And finally, the only knob that we haven't touched is the ratio, and that just kind of controls how hard we're compressing. So for every two, I think the formula is that for every 2 dB of input above the threshold level in this case, so every 2 dB above minus 14, we get the output only increases by 1 dB. So it just kind of controls how hard we're compressing down. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to play the beat, and I'm going to slowly lower the threshold and until we start seeing some gain reduction happening here, until we start actually seeing the compressor working. So here's what we're going to do. I'm going to slowly lower it, lowering it, lowering it. Okay, so we're starting to see some gain reduction there. So right around there is probably a great place. And remember, we want the compression here to be as transparent as possible. We don't really want to hear too much compression. This is supposed to just kind of gently, very gently squeeze your jelly rolls together so it doesn't look like you've been munching on Twinkies your whole adult life. Okay, so check it. See how right now our threshold point is around the area where the solid green volume bars turn into the transparent green. So it's just around that area where the solid green turns transparent. And what the solid green bars represent is the average loudness. So Live is measuring the loudness over a longer period of time and seeing kind of where it averages out. So that's the solid green. The transparent green right above it is more measuring the peaks, right? So the individual kicks and snares. And what we're doing with this compressor was we're just trying to convert some of those peaks into more average loudness. So we're just making like I said, this is what a compressor does. It makes the volume more even over time. We're dampening down on those loud sounds. Okay, wowzers. And if you wanted to, you could add your own compressor. Prior to this, I use the MJUCR. This is also a free plugin. I set the time constants to auto because I just like that. And this is a compressor that is less transparent. It adds a little bit more character to kind of make it a nice warm round tone. So let's just add a little bit of compression on here as well. Just a little bit. We want just barely any here. Or just a little bit. A little bit more. What the fuck? Oh, there we go. So we just want to very, very gently squeeze the mix together with this. Okay, wowzers. So give yourself another tap on the wrist. You're almost through the mastering stage. So after we've identified the resonant peaks and gently squeeze the signal together, it's time to add some limiting. Okay, so wowzers, let's just go ahead and drop the limiter on here. And the limiter is kind of like a compressor, right? It's all about reducing the distance between the quietest parts of the sound and the loudest. So it's once again squeezing that dynamic range there. But the thing about the limiter is it doesn't let the signal go above a certain threshold or ceiling, which in this case is minus 0.3 dB. So no signal can actually go above minus 0.3 dB with the limiter. It's very steadfast. It's kind of a hard ass. So what we're going to do is actually we're going to change the release time away from auto. And we're actually going to turn it down to around 3.5 milliseconds. And this is kind of a good middle ground. So at 3 milliseconds, the limiter is super reactive. It allows you to kind of crank the limiter harder, but there's an increased risk of distortion. Whereas 5 milliseconds, you can't quite crank the limiter as hard. You can't increase the gain knob as much. However, less risk for distortion. So 3.5, 4 is kind of a sweet spot right there. So what we're going to do, I would turn down your headphones for this, guys. This is going to get real extreme. We're going to, slowly raise the gain knob here until the gain reduction meter is kind of peaking around minus 6 dB. Okay, so check it. Let's just go ahead and listen. All right, we're going to slowly raise that gain there. Keep going. Keep going. Keep going. Wowzers. Okay. So around there, kind of where we want it. And let's go ahead and check this against the second drop there. Okay, so we're almost done with the mastering here. I think there's just one last step that I forgot to mention. Um, Check it. So you probably heard this is a very big SoundCloud trend, okay, to have really wide 808s, really stereoized 808s. They're just kind of, happening. It's all over the place. Super stereo 808s. And this is a problem because most club systems are actually in mono. So when you play a track with a super wide stereo image in the low end, we're actually going to be hearing a lot of muddiness. And this is a problem. So to kind of circumvent that, what we're going to do is we're going to essentially monoize the bass. So we're going to take everything under around, say, 80 hertz and just convert that to mono while still preserving the stereo image of the upper end. So it'll be like a tree, or like a flower, just slowly expanding as it grows up. Something my childhood never had. So what we're gonna do is we're actually gonna open up an audio effect rack, and we're gonna create two chains here, two chains, and the bottom chain is gonna be the bass. We're gonna just call it the bass mono, and the upper chain is going to be the stereo image. And on the bass mono, we're going to place a utility. And the nice thing about the utility is you can actually take a signal and convert it to mono. So we can take the signal, right now we're hearing the stereo, and as I lower this width percentage, it just slowly takes out everything that's happening in the stereo image and just preserves the mono. So check it. Perfectly mono signal. Wowzers. Okay, so check it. Here's the thing. We only want a certain band of frequencies to be mono, right? So what we're going to do is we're going to drop an EQ8 on there, right? And then we're going to place it before the utility. And we're just going to cut everything above, say, 80 hertz. So I'm just going to slowly lower that. We're going to do the steep cut just to be a little bit more precise here. And we're just going to cut everything above 80 hertz. And for the stereo, we're essentially going to do the opposite, right? We're just going to essentially, preserve everything above 80 hertz and then cut the rest. So what we're going to do, so this way there's no overlap between the stereo signal chain and the bass mono chain. So the end result sounds like this. Oh, wowzers. So you can already hear the bass is just much more present. We just take that out. And the other nice thing about this is that we've essentially split the signals of these two frequency bands. So we can actually, if we wanted to, make the bass slightly louder without affecting the rest of the track here. Okay. And that, my fellas, my friends, is my mastering signal chain. Give yourself yet another tap on the wrist, both wrists even. You did great. We made it through here. And if we wanted to, we could actually save this audio effect track. We just call it bass monoizer, and we could just save it. And this time we'll have it ready to go anytime we want to mono that bass. So great, awesome. You guys did great. Any questions so far of any of that shit? Let's see, what are people saying? All right, my stepmom. Okay, so a couple of you guys are saying use multiband dynamics, so I don't have to do the whole stereo whatever. So I've never gotten away with making multiband dynamics sound good. I have no idea how to make that happen. the other reason why I use the bass monoizer is that the multiband dynamics doesn't actually let you change the stereo image of a signal. In fact, Live 10 has a bass monoizer built in to the utility, and if any of you guys want to hook me up with the beta, would be much appreciated. Give yourself extra tap on the wrist for that. But basically, I haven't been able to make multiband dynamics sound good. It always seems to mess with the balance of my mixdown. So I think if your mixdown sounds good from the get-go in terms of its balance between the low, mids, and highs, multiband dynamics shouldn't be necessary, I don't think. Let's see what else you guys are saying. Okay, mid side, once again, have no idea how that works. Okay, so solo the multiband, what else are you saying? Oh yeah, okay. So it looks like my face is still a little bit too present. Let me just go ahead and just put that on the upper right corner. So you can still see my beautiful face. I'm just gonna make it a little smaller. Okay, some other things people are saying. Do I prefer to mix in headphones or monitors? I prefer to mix in headphones, but the thing is, I don't have any good monitors, so I'm kind of screwed in that regard. I've mixed in headphones pretty much my whole life, um, and I'm just used to it. But if I were to recommend anything to a new producer, I would invest in monitors if you're not a cheap cuck like me. Um, Great. Let's see what else people are saying. Mid side, bit easier. Yeah, I'm not sure how to use mid side. Um, okay. Let's see what else is saying. RMS. Yeah, RMS is kind of the average loudness that I was talking about, represented by the solid green in the volume. Okay. Great. Okay, so a couple of you are asking, how do I stop masturbating so much? Well, you don't have to. Okay, it's very simple. Klanghelm, yeah, Klanghelm is dope. All right, ratio 2 to 4 dB. 2 to 4 dB with the mixed gel on the master is a little bit too much, I would say. I would aim for around 1 or 2 dB of gain reduction. Okay, great. So now what we're going to do, now that I've kind of explained that track over there, we're just going to do some track feedback. A couple of you guys actually sent me links to my email, which I very much appreciate. So now I'm just going to roast you. Those who did send, I'm just going to roast you in front of hundreds of people. I hope you are all very excited. If you want to get roasted, please go ahead and send your track to DJ Underbelly at gmail.com, and I will be happy to roast you right now. It's very much in reach. So this first track is coming from Dennis. Hello, Dennis. So what we're gonna do is we're just gonna all take a listen together to Dennis to Paintic Lape by Dennis here. So let's go ahead. I'm just gonna make sure that the audio is gonna come through for everyone involved here. Let me just do multi-output device. Great. So should be loading right now. Once again, if you'd like to get roasted in front of everyone, please don't hesitate to send your track to djunderbelly at gmail.com. All right, let's take a listen to Dennis. Dennis, my man, that was sick, bruv. So, I really loved all the intricate percussive bleeps, bloops elements there. I thought that was really well done. Reminds me a lot of Tipper. I don't know if you've ever checked him out. Um, that was all very well done. I love how intricate that was. Couple things I noticed you could probably crank your kick and snare up a little bit higher. Don't be afraid to do that. This is something I tell to a lot of students. I really like, personally, I really like my drums to be quite loud and punchy. So don't be afraid to crank the kick and snare there. I also noticed that there were a couple other elements that had a little bit too much low end frequency information that might be interfering with the bleeps and bloops and your main bass there. So please make sure that you have that low cut like I was showing you in my track in Blindfold Vasectomy. You have that low cut on every track other than your bass to make sure that your low end is as clean and wonderful as possible. Hey, somebody just gave me $5 for a sandwich. Who was that? Is that Jacob? Jacob, you're the man, dude. Thank you so much. I appreciate that a lot. All right, so let's see. I got a couple more emails, I think. Let's see. Oh, wow. Oh, shit. So I got like 20 emails in like the last 2 minutes. So unfortunately, we only have 8 minutes. So I really only have time for one more. I'm just gonna close my eyes and I'm just going to click randomly, and then I will decide the track based on that. So I'm moving my cursor. I'm not looking where I'm hitting, and then who did I select? I selected Daniel. Okay. Sincerely yours, Dingus. Okay, so let's just take a listen here to Daniel's track. It's called Recessive Gene. Unfortunately, it looks like we only have time for this one track left. Um, cool. So I'm just going to play this and then we'll try and wrap up after. Oh, look at this. Look at me. All right. Cool. So let's hear it. Ooh, that's hot. All right, Daniel. Thank you for sending that through. Kind of gave me it was cool. It gave me like a kind of cinematic John Hopkins type vibe. Once again, my critique will be pretty similar to the last track. I personally felt that you could have cranked your kick a lot more and possibly even added some sidechain into the piano and bass. Another thing that I encourage you to experiment with is a little bit more texture. So trying to incorporate that blanket of white noise or vinyl crackle or what have you, a little bit more texture in your track because at times it just sounds a little bit dry. Makes sense, my man? All right, so unfortunately, we have, yeah, so Autechre Vibes, agreed on the low end, much love, Wowzers. Okay. All right. So let's see. Have I missed anything? We have time for maybe like one more question. Um, let's see. Ba, 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 ba. Jacob, once again for giving me that sandwich. Shit. There's like so many questions that I can't actually address any of them. It's it's oh. All right, so I unfortunately have a lesson in 4 minutes. So thank you guys so much for being here. I'm sorry that I couldn't, uh, get to all your tracks and questions. I will definitely be doing another live stream. Um, Thank you so much. If you ever wanted to, do this one on one with yours truly, so there aren't 50,000 other dinguses that I have to deal with, and I could guarantee giving you personalized feedback and all that. Please don't hesitate to sign up for a private lesson, and that I would be happy to work with you one on one to get your tracks to be the very best they can be. So please don't hesitate to sign up. I do a free orientation, and you can just schedule one with me right now by clicking on the link in the video description, party people. So I will see you next week. Um, I will be uploading a new You Suck at Producing video on loudness next week, and I will definitely be doing another live stream. Um, so yeah, so um, I think that's pretty much it, party people. Unfortunately, like I said, I have to go, but thank you guys so much. Mwah, mwah, I love you all of you. Thank you for buying me a sandwich, Jacob. You're the man. So yeah, take care, y'all. Peace.